some horse stories.
Yeah, probably.
Mr. Chairman, it's more than 5 minutes past time, and we do have a quorum, so if we can begin whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll call this meeting to order, and thank you all for attending this meeting today. So we need a confirmation of a quorum.
Yes, sir. There is a quorum and the press has been notified.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes of April 29th, 2021. If there are no objections or corrections, I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Steve will make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Second?
This is George. I'll second it.
Thank you, George. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. All right, so Tracy Thurston, inducement resolution for 1405 West Broadway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the board. This is an inducement resolution for 1405 West Broadway Apartments. 1405 West Broadway Apartments project is requesting bonding authority in amount not to exceed $16,500,000. The project involves the acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation of 116 units located at 1405 West Broadway in Louisville. The project will serve households at or below 60% AMI, and of the 116 units, 96 will be one bedroom and 20 will be two bedroom. The development team members are listed on the screen there. And as financing progresses with this project, a separate resolution will be brought back to the board of directors to authorize the issuance and sale of the tax-exempt bonds. So this is just an inducement resolution and staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Does any member have any questions for Tracy?
This is Kathy. And first of all, Tracy, thank you for putting in the bedrooms. And this team is a great team. I'm just going to ask about the future, since we had the building at 5th and, that's all one bedroom that we approved. And now 96 more one bedrooms. Are you checking to make sure in the future, I'm not opposed to this, that there is some sort of balance and market for all these one bedroom units in the future?
Yeah, so it's my understanding this particular project will serve seniors, so 1 and 2 bedrooms is pretty typical. We do require a market study for every single project that comes through, whether it's through our tax-exempt bond program or our low-income housing tax credit program, to indicate that there is demand in the marketplace, and we have market capture rates that are required for them to meet to make sure that the demand is out there and it's the correct unit count. And if for some reason it's not, we require that to be corrected and a new market study be updated. So we are watching that, and we will look forward to that in the future as well.
Okay, thanks. Because I think it was over 100 units for that. What is it, like a 5th of Muhammad Ali or whatever? That's the rehab of the Starks building. I think I brought last month. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other members have any questions for Tracy? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this inducement resolution.
They also moved.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yates, second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, so Tracy, final resolution for Cambridge Square.
Thank you. The Cambridge Square project was granted an inducement resolution on December 10th, 2020 for bonding authority in amount not to exceed $33 million. This is the final resolution for that project. This project involves the rehabilitation of 200 units serving families at or below 60% AMI. The project consists of 61 bedroom units, 102 bedroom units, and 43 bedroom units, and is located in Covington, Kenton County. This particular project has a project-based contract on it, supporting 199 of the 200 units. The development team is listed there on your screen. This is a final resolution. So KHC staff recommends approval of the board of directors for the issuance and sale of tax-exempt bonds for Cambridge Square.
Any members have any questions for Tracy? Not, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt this final resolution.
PG, I make the motion.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
This is Holly, I'll second.
Thanks, Holly. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Tracy,
Thank you all.
for your hard work. Okay, so fiscal year 2022 corporate planning. Gail Lively and John Davidson, I'm going to turn that over to you to present the overarching strategies, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recognize the Communication and Planning Committee members, Jerry Yates. Jerry, you're here. Phil Moffitt, I didn't see Phil, but I'm assuming. And Beverly Chester Burton. Mayor. Prior to the board meeting, we received the fiscal year 21 overarching strategies with Amy Smith, Deputy Executive Director, John Davidson, Director of Corporate Planning and Accountability. And at that time, we had opportunities to ask questions and discuss the progress of all the teams and their business goals for fiscal year ending June 20th. I'm pleased with the progress that the staff has made toward achieving the goals for fiscal 2021, especially in light of the continuing business operations during the pandemic. The implementation of various new COVID relief funding programs and funding the pension withdrawal decision approved by the board. We also discussed the fiscal 22 draft strategies for the new fiscal year 2022. The strategies will be effective on July 1 for the new fiscal year. At this time, I would like to ask John Davidson, Director of Corporate Planning and Accountability, to review KHC's overall planning process with the board, as well as the fiscal 2022 strategies. John or I hopefully will be able to answer any questions you have. And at this time, I would like to compliment the staff. Wonderful job. And John, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Gail, for your introduction. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm John Davidson, Director of Corporate Planning and Accountability, and I'll be presenting Agenda Item 5A, the Fiscal 22 Corporate Planning, a presentation of the overarching strategies. Jeremy, if you would go to the first slide of the presentation. Over the past several years, the corporation is focused on providing support and to our partners and clients while increasing revenue and limiting our costs. In fiscal 22, there have been several new challenges and opportunities we've had to consider, but also have included in our planning process. These are the pension decision and the exit of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority, the COVID-19 pandemic and the administration of nearly $400 million in multiple COVID relief funds over the next several years throughout the Commonwealth, and sustaining and advancing our workforce with a continued focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you can see on the screen here, we have a very rigorous planning process that includes at its core a cost revenue analysis for each program that we administer in our internal support areas. We know how much it costs to deliver each of our services internally and externally. All of the corporate plans are aligned. The corporate strategies, the departmental plans, the allocation plan, which outlines our program funding across the state to several entities that Ms. Wendy Smith will be talking about shortly. The operating budget, which outlines our operating costs to support our mission, which Jim Statler is going to review later, as well as, last but not least, our enterprise risk management plan. These are all tied together by the corporate strategies. And as Ms. Lively has mentioned, each of these are overseen and shared with a board committee. The overarching strategies with the Communications and Planning Committee. The allocation plan is reviewed and shared with the Programs and Policy Committee. And then finally, the operating budget is reviewed by the Finance Committee. Without further ado, I'm going to present the fiscal 22 strategies, which closely mirror the fiscal 21 strategies with a few additions that we'll go over. Serving with purpose, providing holistic housing solutions, being flexible and responding to financial risk, and lastly, sustaining and advancing core competencies. I'd like to go into a little detail about each of these strategies. Strategy 1, serve with a purpose. There's a continued focus on helping Kentuckians throughout all of our programming and mission, as well as helping assist our neighbors as we continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. In strategy 2, providing holistic housing solutions, we prioritize new programs and products to make certain we can afford them and support them while we continue to operate our existing programs proficiently. Under this strategy, we have an opportunity to align new programs with existing programs to make an impact in housing throughout the Commonwealth. The last couple of strategies, number 3, being flexible and responding to financial risk. We continue to focus on managing risk and identifying and evaluating limiting factors for all of our programs while optimizing the usage of our available funds that come to the state and to Kentucky Housing Corporation. Finally, in strategy 4, sustaining and advancing core competencies, we continue to focus on developing our staff, planning for succession when turnover occurs, improving processes, and strengthening our ability to maintain and continue strong programming focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, both internally and externally. And a copy of these strategies is available as well. So Jeremy, if you'll go down to the last couple of slides here. I'd like to end the presentation by showing you our corporate strategy dashboard. Each department is responsible for tracking financial, business, and programmatic metrics. Each quarter, those are rolled up and put on this corporate dashboard, which is reviewed by KHC's executive management team, along with other reports and documents. Finally, I'd like to give you a few examples of some accomplishments by various areas in fiscal 21 through the third quarter. In our loan servicing department, the HUD tier ranking of A has been maintained throughout the fiscal year. In our single family area, we have almost $368 million in loan production. In our finance area, over $28.75 million in secondary market trade gains. Over 4,700 housing choice vouchers are currently leased underneath our tenant assistance program. That's a large number. A consistent increase in KHC staff minority representation percentage, continuing to go up. Over 2,000 multifamily units preserved and created in our multifamily programs. And the last two items on here are indicative of a large corporate effort by all of our program areas, as well as all of our business service areas. The successful closeout of the Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund 1.0 and the implementation of 2.0 is underway and is currently being administered by the corporation. And you can see all the program areas there and all the staff, the countless hours that have gone into that. And last but not least, the implementation of all COVID-19 requirements to support onboarding. We have onboarded 80 to 100 new staff to administer all of these programs and more to come, as well as all of our staff are fully capable and mostly working remotely. And that is a huge testament to not only our technology services team, but all of the business service areas. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to respond to any questions. And if there are none, I will turn it back to Ms. Lively. Thank you all.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This wasn't in my packet. Are you asking me to vote on this today? I'm not saying I even disagree with it, but I think those of you on the board already know that I like to ask questions, and I didn't even know about this. I don't know, maybe you should add communications. But I didn't get it. I don't know if anyone else did, but
This is not a voting item.
Okay, then I'm good. If I don't have to vote on it, then I'm fine.
The voting, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it was not in the packet, so.
Any other members have any questions of John? So Gail, do you have anything you want to add?
Kathy, you raise a good point. We'll try to make sure that these items, even though informational, are in the packet in advance of the meeting so that you have an opportunity to reflect on them. And so that's an excellent point. I was unaware that it had not made the packet.
Please, I am not saying I'm against these. I just, like to know what I'm, and now I can talk to John about it. So there you go.
You can. And any of the board members that have questions about this that have not had an opportunity to sort of process it before now, please continue your thought on it and engage in any conversation you'd like directly with John. He'd be happy to answer your questions, and so would I, to the extent that I can assist.
Gail, you want to add anything?
Only that the staff has worked tirelessly, and we have such a great staff overall, but this group has just gone over and above. So thank you, and you make us all look good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Gail, and thank you, John. And I would tell you, from what I see here, I'm especially impressed with the support for the remote working for the staff. That is a tremendous undertaking, and I know how tough it was here, and for an institution as large as KHC, it had to be a daunting situation. So I appreciate your all's hard work and your effort, and Gail, I appreciate your committee's work on this. So,
thank you.
I'd like to say it was a very good presentation as well.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all.
And I don't think there is a motion required here. Is that correct, Jeremy? No motion.
No, there's not.
That is correct. It's informational.
All right. Okay. All right. So if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move on to the adoption of the Kentucky Housing Corporation's fiscal year 2022 annual allocation plan. And that's Barry Knopfsinger and Wendy Smith. I'll turn it over to you all.
Great. Sorry for being a little late or tardy, if you will. I'd like to blame it on technology, but I'm actually going to blame it on me playing with Wendy a little bit, just trying to make her sweat just a tad bit. So anyway, as John had mentioned and shared with us, each year KHC's fiscal year planning includes overarching strategies, the annual allocation plan, and our operating budget. Now, whereas the operating budget Jim will present to us later in the meeting depicts how our money will be spent internally to keep KHC running, the KHC allocation plan is an external facing document allowing how KHC's many funding sources will be invested in across the state. The allocation plan charts KHC's projected sources, uses, and housing impacts. As chair of the Programming and Policy Committee, I reviewed the KHC's fiscal year 2022 allocation plan earlier this week, and I invite Wendy to share with us the allocation plan with the board.
Thanks, Barry, and I'm glad you made it to the meeting. I didn't know how to introduce myself for the committee, so I really appreciate that you made it. And Jeremy, if you don't mind going to page 32. 32, which is Yes, that one. And zooming in a little bit because this is kind of tiny. Thank you. So if you're looking at your own PDF packet, we're on page 32. And let me tell you, I can't wait till we can meet in person, because often when we're going through these schedules with the board, we hand out rulers so that you all can keep the rows in line as we go through them. John and my presentation is so much more entertaining in person than it is over Zoom. It's just tough to present this much information remotely. So I'm guessing you all might feel the same. And so, Jeremy, if you don't mind zooming in even more and just making sure it's scrolled over to the left so that we can see the FY22 numbers. I just feel like this is so tiny, it's probably hard for some folks to see. So what I'm going to do is try in a few minutes to encapsulate for you all the programmatic dollars that come into KHC. That would be our sources. And then how we use those or plan to use those, because this is a plan, not an actuals document, how we plan to use those in next fiscal year across our program areas, and then what that means in terms of kind of zoomed out impact across the Commonwealth. I want to let you all know that these 3 pages summarize at least 15 different schedules that have tons more detail. So it's really hard to know how to calibrate this detail right for you all, not to overdo it and not to make it so simplified it's not meaningful. But we're going to give it a shot. So if we start on this sources page, this gives you all this roster of the funding that comes to KHC. And it's in a couple of buckets. That peach colored row gives you kind of those overall categories. The first one is Ktc Funds. And these are funds where effectively for the Housing Assistance Fund, we generate revenue through our single family lending, and we reinvest that in the mission. And these funds you will see when we go to uses are used several different ways. We also have the State Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is a state generated resource that comes only to KHC and we administer across the state. And then we have a Housing Development Fund, which is again our own dollars that we have generated, and we use that for lending in projects. The next big category, it's our biggest category if you're looking at the overall dollar number, is our tax-exempt bonds, low-income housing tax credits, and a lot of our mortgage lending and mortgage activity. So this is by far the largest source of uses that come into KHC. And that's our bond capital, if you will, our loan capital for single-family mortgages, low-income housing tax credit equity estimates. So you will see that number for the tax credits is $116 million. That is how much we get in tax credits, roughly times 10, because those credits are taken over 10 years. So it generates equity, a large amount of equity for rental projects. And then we have this tiny little, almost amusing amount in the National Mortgage Settlement, which is obviously winding down. The third big bucket is our federal allocations and contracts. These are dollars that come to us either by formula allocation, meaning the state of Kentucky gets this money every year and it's based on a HUD or other agency formula, or they are funds that we competitively compete for, with a federal agency, or they represent a contract that we have with a federal agency. Usually it's going to be HUD. Sometimes it might be another federal agency. And so we have our Section 8 rental assistance programs. That's both our vouchers as well as project-based contract administration. We have the home program, which comes from HUD. We have the hardest hit unemployment bridge program, which is a carryover from the last recession that we still have a little bit of those dollars left. Our continuum of care is money for homelessness programs. We compete for that. That is not a given that we get that every year. We compete for that across the country. The TCAP repayment is from the last recession also, and it was kind of replacement dollars when tax credits were not a valuable or appealing investment vehicle for investors. the TCAP program was created in exchange, and we get to reuse and revolve those dollars. Emergency Solutions Grant, that is a homelessness program. It's a formula grant that we get every year. Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, again, a formula grant that we get every year. And then there is the National Housing Trust Fund, which represents, again, an outcome from the last recession. It was a settlement with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And you will note this is in particular a notable source in that it is more than doubling this year. There were some changes to the settlement, and we ended up getting obviously more than twice as much as we typically do. Okay, the next fourth big category is state contracts. We have contracts with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to administer a low-income home energy assistance program. That's to do home improvements to lower energy costs, to lower the utility bills for folks. We work with low-income homeowners on that. Weatherization is very similar, almost identical program, and we weave those dollars together. The last one in this bucket is the Olmstead program, and that's to help adults with severe mental illness exit institutionalization and live on their own. It's a rent subsidy. And then the last category is sort of a miscellaneous right now and represents some temporary dollars. The Emergency Solutions Grant Program, which came through the CARES Act related to COVID-19, and then a Treasury Eviction Relief Program, Eviction Rental Assistance 1.0 is what Treasury calls it. We run this as Healthy at Home Eviction Relief. And we have plugged in here an estimate of using about $125 million this year. What is not on this schedule of sources is something I talked to you about, I think it was at the last board meeting or the one before, is all of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that are coming to KHC. That's well over $500 million. And we are still in that process of planning and figuring out what we're going to do and what it's going to cost us to administer those. So they're just too big for us to get into this allocation plan just yet. We kind of think we're going to have a separate schedule for all of the COVID-19 Rescue Plan Act dollars. So that's the sources. I'm going to stop there before we move on to how we're going to use these sources to see if any board members just want to ask a question about these sources. All right, well then, Jeremy, if you will then go to slide 32, which should be the uses. Don't mind zooming in just a wee bit. And I won't go through every line item. This is just what you all looked at, but now spliced into how are we using these dollars across our different program areas. Now, I want to make sure that you all know and understand most of the funding we get is not fungible across different program areas. We get it for a specific purpose and we have to use it for that specific purpose. It's not something we can just move around on this chart as we see fit. There are a few funding sources that are fungible, however. Those would primarily be our Housing Assistance Fund dollars, which is money KHC generated and we're reinvesting in the mission. We use that in several different places on this schedule that you're looking at. The HUD Home Program can be used in several different ways and is on several spots on this schedule. And then the State Affordable Housing Trust Fund can be used in a couple different ways, and it shows up in a few spots on this. And so without boring you all with all the details of the uses, I would primarily say that we, I would say 70% of these, we're using it for the only thing we're allowed to use it for. With the others, we meet several departments along with John Davidson's team to kind of, horse trading is probably not the right way, but every couple months we meet to kind of say, okay, what's in the hopper, what with multifamily is coming up, how do we need to think about where the dollars should be allocated across our different uses. And we've even gotten to the point, because we've been doing that, that we can do what we're calling forward allocation, which is committing early to projects and even committing sometimes funds that we know we're going to get in the future. And we're just doing a better job, in my view, of managing the pipeline. And a lot of that has to do with John Davidson's team serving us, and Tracy's multifamily staff and my programmatic staff working together to kind of check in really regularly on this. So I think the easiest thing to do at this point, Jeremy, is to go back to page 31, which is the overall impact summary of all of our sources, all of our funding. I guess you'll have to zoom out on this, If I were a board member who really wasn't interested in all of the different line items, but wanted a sense of what the heck is going on at KHC, this would be the sheet that I would use. Because what this does is even roll all this information up into a little more of a streamlined format. Again, for FY22, these are our planned allocations. And we still are just in a planned number situation for FY21, because we're still in FY21 and we don't have our actuals. But you can see over to your right that for fiscal year 2020, we do know what our actual numbers, were for our different outcomes. And so I just wanted to have you all be able to see this, to note, I feel quite proud about it when I look at the FY 2020 numbers, those actuals that are in blue, to think about the number of households that we are helping with a mortgage, with down payment assistance, with the construction of a new house or a repair of an existing house, the construction or rehab of multifamily properties all across the Commonwealth, offering rent assistance to some of our lowest income and neediest households, being able to offer shelter and services to Kentuckians experiencing homelessness, help make homes energy efficient, because that's a great way to increase affordability, is getting that utility bill down. And then, of course, we've got our temporary COVID-19 money. And there will be a lot more on that list in the near future. So again, it's hard to go through all this detail when we're remote, but I think this is in some ways the most important way to communicate our mission. It really shows you how many households we're going to impact in a given fiscal year. Now, I will stop there because it's a lot, especially to digest via Zoom, and welcome any questions again.
So, Wendy, let me ask you, how often do you update this? Once a month?
John, remind me, do we do the actuals for the allocation plan quarterly? I think that's on a quarterly basis.
Quarterly.
That is correct.
Yeah. And so that, which allows us then to say, we're not using that for this program like we thought we would. Let's shift it to another program area when the dollars allow it. A few of them do allow us to move it between uses. A few don't.
So when you start receiving the rescue plan money, you will update this for us. Is that correct?
We're going to have to, or we're going to do a version of this, Mike, that looks very similar, but we'll just have those funding sources on it, because I really do think those total to close to 500 or more than $500 million. So we might just need to give them their own sheet, okay. But yes, it'll be something like this.
That's very impressive.
We feel good about crafting this as a way to try to roll up a lot. We really are running a lot of different lines of business or organizations, however you want to look at it, under this umbrella of KHC. And so this is our best effort at trying to pull it all together for you all.
So do any members have any questions of Wendy and Barry?
Hearing none, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you would like to, I'll wrap up. So, Mike, if you have a comment.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to defer to you, Barry.
Oh, okay, great. No, Whitney's done a fabulous job, and the team is excellent. As she alluded to just a second ago, the number of households tell the story of this synopsis sheet, and we touched the lives of almost 75,000 households in the Commonwealth this coming year, which is incredible. And if you go back to, Jeremy, if you go back to the second slide, or 32, I think it is, you'll see a lot of gray areas to the right. This is why Wendy doesn't sleep at night or doesn't get vacation time. We're going to tack that onto your pension, by the way, at the end, as far as the vacation time, because she's not going to get any this summer with the American Rescue numbers and things of that nature. But her team has had to add a lot more work onto this. So a yeoman's job of getting this done. And again, making sure that the fungible items are managed correctly and the non is also managed correctly, because each category we got to drain every year. So that's a good thing. So with that, I will, unless there's any other questions from the board, I will recommend that we adopt the 2022 allocation plan by the full board.
We'll make that in the form of a motion, Barry, for us.
I do.
Okay.
So I move.
Second. I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Wendy and Barry, thank you all for your hard work on this. And Wendy, please express to your team our appreciation. And I especially appreciate you helping us out up here a few weeks ago. So you do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item is report of action and recommendations of the Finance Committee at a meeting that was held on May 20th. Stephen Brunson, I'll yield to you to discuss this along with Kevin Field and Jim Statler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. As the chairman said, Finance Committee did meet on May the 20th of this year. Kevin Field, internal audit, led off the meeting with a presentation of the fiscal year 2022 annual internal audit plan. And what I'd like to do at this time is ask Kevin to step forward and give us the highlights of that plan. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Brunson, and good afternoon to the members of the board. For your consideration is resolution number 26, which is a recommendation for the approval of the annual internal audit plan for fiscal year 2022. Auditing standards require that a risk-based audit plan be developed to determine the priorities of the internal audit function in a manner that's consistent with the organization's goals. So the plan, if you could scan down to the first page there, this is the audit plan, and it's designed basically to provide a summary regarding the audit services which are to be performed during the upcoming fiscal year. And it includes operational audits, programmatic audits, and reviews, as well as external audit support and advisory service. So a summary of these planned activities, Jeremy, if we go to page 5, this is where we start the summary of those audit services. And again, they're broken down into external audit support and single audit testing, as well as quality assurance reviews. And then the next page covers the operational programmatic. Also, a summary of completed audit projects for this current fiscal year, I should say, fiscal year 21, is also outlined on pages 9 and 10 of this plan. Just provide a summary of the work that has been performed this past year. So, although much of the work that we do in the internal audit department is regulatory in nature, the audit plan is really designed to be a flexible document. And with that in mind, the audit department is always available to address any concerns of the board of directors or senior management. So I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, for your consideration is the audit plan for fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Kevin. Any members have any questions of Stephen or Kevin? Stephen, you want to make the motion for
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the Finance Committee, would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 26, approval of the fiscal year 2022 annual internal audit plan.
Have a second on that? Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Stephen, you and Jim want to talk about the
Yes.
financial update.
Yes, thank you. Continuing on with our meeting minutes, our Chief Financial Officer, Jim Statler, did present some details of the March 31, 2021 financial statement. He's going to give an abbreviated version here shortly. Financially, the corporation had a very good third quarter, which, the results being very good for the performance of this year. The primary drivers behind the performance, according to Jim, was the significant increase in secondary market gains, also higher fees from rental housing production, and also single-family servicing revenues, all of which were well ahead of plan. In addition to that would be expenditures being favorable to the plan. And at this time, if Jim's available to step forward, I'll let him build on this wonderful news.
Thank you, Mr. Brunson. I appreciate it. If you could look at the first chart on your screen, using the very technical navigation aids, line A shows a small decrease in total assets of the corporation. Line B shows a much larger decrease in total liabilities of the corporation. And when assets drop a little and liabilities drop a lot, that means line C, the net position of the corporation, improves rather dramatically. In this case, close to $40 million. Just a couple of other items of note on this page are lines D and E. The balance sheet's important. It has to show that we have a nice net worth, and it paints the picture of what the accountants say we have to paint the picture with on the balance sheet. What's not on the balance sheet, as has been the case for several years, is the loan service for others, which is an annuity stream driver that is not on the balance sheet. So if you don't know it's there, you'd say, how can we make so much money if we don't have any assets to make it? This is the asset that makes a good bit of our bottom line. And I'm not upset to say that it's decreased, but we are getting hit by massive amounts of loan payoffs, that their loans are paying off faster than we can replace them with new first-time home buyers. And so since the beginning of the fiscal year, we've dropped about $40 million in notional amount of the service for others. The bright point of this is on line E, that even though we're dropping notional amount, the earnings rate on the portfolio has jumped from 32.7 bips to 33.4. And so we're actually taking in higher income overall, even though the size of the portfolio is shrinking just a little bit. If you go to the next page, the black and red chart, this is a chart that the directors who've been here with us for a while recognize. You can see over on the right that the red line has crested and is now starting to convex down. This was pretty much anticipated. This is a chart of our servicing portfolio, both on and off the balance sheet. And one of the things about being a mortgage servicer and a mortgage banking arm of an organization like Kentucky Housing is that the bigger you get, the harder it is to keep getting bigger, because the payoffs of what you've got on your portfolio mount up to the point where they might pay off faster than you can replace them. That's indicative here. The black line is what we would look like if we were not in the secondary market necessarily. We are letting the bonds pay off, and the indenture is shrinking, but the metric of how we produce loans and using the secondary market from a cash flow standpoint and present value standpoint is superior than financing it with bonds. So it's kind of a little interesting picture of what's happened to the corporation's balance sheet vis-a-vis its bonds and servicing portfolio over the last, 12 or 13 years. Looking quickly at the income statement, if you look at line A, which is at the bottom of the page, compared to last year, we're $12.7 million more profitable. That is a number that represents more profitable based on decisions that we're making, and it's irrespective of market value movement of our investment portfolio. If you look at the number just above that, it's unlabeled, it's $7.1 million. That is how much more income on a net basis we've made this year than we made at this point for the first 9 months of last year. And so it's been a very good year compared to last year. Last year was a very good year compared to the year before. So it's getting just better over the last 2 years. Looking up at line B, this is a negative. We are not making as much net interest income off of the bond indenture as we did last year. That's a trend that's been continuing for quite a while. That's indicative of the shrinkage of the HRB and the decrease in the income being thrown off the HRB in favor of the line just below that, which is line D, where we're getting all of the income up front in the form of cash via the secondary marketing gains. And so we gave up $3.6 million of running rate in the HRB compared to last year and took in $11.4 million more in secondary marketing gains. I'll repeat what I've been telling the board in the last year of meetings. The gains on the sale of the loans has just been absolutely fabulous. It is decreasing a little bit month to month. I do not expect fiscal 22 to be nearly as robust as fiscal 21, but still a primary driver of our bottom line and primary driver of our future bottom line in that it creates the servicing portfolio that drives the annuity stream that we earn. Going down to line C, general administrative expenses, you see that dropping this year versus last by a little over $2.2 million. That's all in how we have to record pension activity under the government accounting standards. And I'd like to say that we were able to shave $2.3 million off of our expense line. That's a non-cash booked entry that we just had to make. Overall, and you will see that in the next couple of slides, the expense levels of the corporation are being held in check. What Mr. Brunson said about, we have higher fees here and higher revenues there. That is complemented by keeping the expenses in line across the corporation. So it's a team effort. It takes all 225 of us to make all this happen. The other line, which is just below line C, you can see a significant decrease in provision for loan losses. For those of you who were on the board at this time last year, in a bit of conservatism with COVID just rearing its face there at March 31, we took a special $1 million charge against future loan losses, hoping that, or not hoping, but in anticipation or not knowing what COVID would actually force. Going to the next schedule, no aids on this one. Looking at the fourth line from the bottom, repayments on housing mortgage loans. I mentioned we had significant increases in prepayments on loans. You can see that last year, this time of year, we only had $67 million of loan payoffs. This year, $96 million in loan payoffs. So the payoffs are causing some pressure on the portfolio size. 2 lines below that, proceeds from issuance of debt, draws on lines of credit. You can see that's almost in half. That's indicative of the fact that we do not have to borrow to run or finance our housing finance program and our single family origination program using internally generated funds instead. And so everything the story is consistent. We're doing well across the board in a time when we're busier than we've been in since I've been here in the last decade and responding to all the stuff going on with COVID. Here's a budget versus actual report. It's the same schedule we look at each quarter. Again, next to letter A or above letter A, $5.6 million surplus for the 9 months ended March 31, compared to a budgeted surplus at this time of $372,000. That's remarkable. It's a $5.25 million improvement over budget right there at letter B. Some cautionary words here. There are some timing differences in the third quarter that will not be duplicated in the fourth quarter. So we're going to give a lot of that favorable variance to budget back. And most of that is going to come on line E, which is rental production. We get a huge amount of revenue in the third quarter every year. And the budget is spread kind of ratably over all 12 months. And so at the end of the third quarter, rental production shows a huge favorable variance. And then in the fourth quarter, it catches up and reverses. And that's going to impact the overall $5.2 million by about $1.5 million. And then there are timing differences in the expenses as well that we'll see on the next page. And the catch up of those differences, I estimate will cost us between $750,000 and $1 million. So that I'm kind of looking at it, this is a soft number of a surplus of about 2.7 million for the year compared to the 1.9 that's in the budget. That's still a pretty good year and pretty favorable to budget. Looking at a couple lines above, line F, which is loan servicing, we are going to generate more servicing fees than we had in the budget for the year. We were tentative on our budget for last year, again, not knowing how much COVID was going to impact us, and it has not impacted us as bad as much as we had budgeted for. And so we're favorable to that, and that number will grow in the fourth quarter. And if you look at line G, U.S. Treasury hardest hit funds, we were very optimistic that relaunching the unemployment bridge program in the face of COVID would be a viable product. It was not as good a product as loan forbearance in general. And so we did not have a whole lot of people, number one, take us up on that, nor need it, right, basically, to get through the COVID forbearance or loan forbearance so far. And so that is way under budget. When we go to the expenses on the next slide, you'll see that there are expenses under budget as well that are associated with that program. Looking at this next schedule, there's a couple items. You can see that salary and benefits is favorable, $636,000. There's timing differences in there. That will reverse to a slight negative by the variance to budget, I anticipate by the end of June. And that has to do with accruals and reversals at the end of each fiscal year. Business services, you can see a huge $801,000 unfavorable budget variance. That is almost all temporary workers that we have hired to administer COVID program, both CARES and eviction relief 1 and 2. And so that negative variance is offset by a positive variance on the administrative fees, which I didn't highlight or talk about on the previous schedule, but that is almost all reimbursable, if not more so than the variance would indicate. The actual spend on business services for those initiatives was much higher than even the $800,000, because in the budget for business services was a lot of expense attributable to the hardest hit fund, which did not take off. And so if the 800 is more of $1 million negative offset by a $200,000 positive coming from UBP on the previous page. Looking at line C, legal fees, the second biggest expense in the unemployment bridge program is legal fees, closing these loans. And since we didn't have very many UBP loans, then we did not incur the legal fees. So, when I say that you're unfavorable on revenue on the front page, you're favorable on the expense side on the back page, net to the bottom line is practically zero. Line D, liquidation shortfall. Liquidation shortfall occurs when there are payoffs of government loans in Ginnie Mae pools. And because the payoffs are way up, the liquidation shortfall is also way up, but $380,000 of that $444,000 is because, again, of some timing differences, and we'll get that money back over the next year or so as we service our pools. And so, yes, it's a big negative this year. It'll be offset by positives in the next couple of years. A couple other positives in the budget versus actual that don't have any navigation aids. The travel for the year is way under budget. The training for clients and partners is way under budget. Employee development is way under budget. All of that is because of curtailed activities due to COVID. And so, again, what you'd expect to see in a budget versus actual for the year is exactly what has happened to the corporation, And I got to compliment, everybody in the company, because it has been difficult. It's been difficult for me. It's been difficult for everybody else. And I think we're firing on as many cylinders as we possibly can. Another little graphic representation here. The blue line on this is the number of delinquent payments that we are suffering right now. You can see the incredible increase over the last 12 months. When loans are in forbearance, we're not getting mortgage payments. And so we not only track how many loans are delinquent some way, which is what the red line is, but we also monitor how many payments are owed in those delinquent loans. And so a loan that's 5 months delinquent, it only counts as 1 on a delinquency scale down below, but it counts as 5 on the blue scale. And so you can see that we have a tremendous amount of payments that we have not received. Again, if you recall last year at this time, we discussed the liquidity issues that could cause. That liquidity, that blue line is costing us by the end of June probably $10 million of money that we have spent to our Ginnie Mae pool investors and our bond investors that we have not received from our customers. That again is a timing difference. When the loans come off of forbearance, claims are filed with FHA and we receive the money back, people go back to work, they catch up their arrearages. And so all of that is timing, but right now we had to have, fortunately we arranged to make sure we had enough cash via lines of credit to be able to withstand this shortfall, which again is forecast to be about $10 million as of June 30th. We're losing about $750,000 to $800,000 a month in cash flow because of the forbearance. If you go to the next slide and look at this is a numeric representation of the forbearance loans, but on the line that's highlighted, there are almost 1,000 loans that are 90 or more days delinquent. I mean, this company has never seen 90-day delinquents like this. And each one of most of those loans are not only 90 plus days, but some of them are 270 to 300 months behind, or not months, I'm sorry, 9 to 10, 12 months behind. And you can see that the numbers add up when you're not getting payments on the front side and you have to pay out taxes and insurance and principal and interest investors and security holders on the backside. These numbers are not as bad in this chart, which is March 31, as they were at December. There is improvement. We are filing a lot of claims. Folks are back to work. They're able to maintain their monthly payment. They can't catch up their arrearages, but HUD's doing that with partial claims. And so we're starting to recover quite a bit. So far, I think $800,000 over the last 7 months or so of people getting back to work, thank goodness, and resuming payments on their loans, and HUD kicking in the partial claims to make the lenders whole. So a lot of good things happening out there. A lot of good things still have to happen for the country to get back to normal. That concludes my third quarter presentation, Mr. Brunson.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Let's see, at this time, if there's no other questions, I'd like to.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Who knew that our financials would be a little story of human misery? But I want to know about, if I understand it correctly, and I might not, Jim, you're saying that a lot of the people that we sold to are that used our product are paying off before, are doing the prepayment. Is that correct? It's not about just selling the loans. These are people who are prepaying the loans?
Yes, they're for the most part refinancing the loans that we had with them. We made a loan 3 years ago at 4%. They're refinancing at 2.5%.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know, if we knew why that was happening, whether people were getting bad loans or,
no,
but you're saying, no, you kind of know what's happening and it's refinance.
Yeah,
with a responsible, prudent product.
Sure. No.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know that from the numbers.
When we made the loans the last 2.5, 3 years ago, and rates are such that borrowers are able to refinance them and be, improve their own. You have that situation in the marketplace, which is favorable for a lot of people. Right. And then of course you have the millions nationwide and thousands and tens of thousands here in the Commonwealth of folks that have lost their jobs or have had their income curtailed. And that's where the forbearance comes in. And hopefully the end game of the forbearance is resolution via claim and people being able to stay in their houses.
I just didn't want people refinancing into predatory loans. So that you put me at ease.
Exactly.
Jim, let me ask you, when does your forbearance run out? Is there a time limit on the forbearance?
Yeah, as it stands right now, somebody that today loses his or her job due to COVID can claim forbearance and gain 12 months of payment forbearance. Anybody whose request for forbearance initiated 12 months ago is in what we call the end stage, and there's no forbearance left, and the forbearance situation has to be resolved. Generally, because most of the loans are FHA, it'll be through a partial claim. What has been not really talked about much today is the American Relief Plan Act, or American Rescue Plan Act, excuse me, has a homeowners assistance fund component in it, which will make funds a little similar right now as we're designing the program to the Unemployment Bridge Program, which will give folks who are still unemployed and unable to, resume making at least one monthly payment, additional assistance so that they can keep their houses. So, anybody that's back to work and can make a payment, they're resolving through mostly HUD's partial claim system. And if they're not working, then there's relief still coming on that through the homeowners assistance.
You all doing a lot of renegotiating of those payments, restructuring?
That activity will really pick up now because it's now been 12, 13, 14 months of forbearance. And the day of, the forbearance is running out. And so there has to be something happen to the borrower, whether it's a modification of the loan. I mean, there's a waterfall of which options have precedence over other options, but the partial, if the borrower can make a payment, partial claim is the best right now, the best outcome. If the borrower cannot make a payment, then it is, again, the partial claim is done, and then we try to find a renegotiation of the loan, extending the maturity of it, dropping the interest rate, any number of different, under the modification rules that are out there. If should any of those fail, then presumably the Homeowners Assistance Fund will be able to continue some assistance to these folks and try to get everybody back on their feet and so that the number of folks that are at risk of losing their homes is kept to a bare minimum.
Thank you.
Stephen, you have any further comments you want to make on this?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman. If there's any other questions, we'll go ahead and move forward with the meeting minutes. Jim continued on and presented to us information on the 2022 budget. And I'll turn it back over to Jim to let him expand upon that.
Thank you, Mr. Brunson. There are two resolutions that we are going to request action on, I should say, in connection with the budget. This should have been in your packet. I'm not going to read the narrative verbatim, but there are sections of it that are worth spelling out and just a little bit about the budget process and what the budget for 2022 looks like. Let me preface that with special thanks to all the budget committee members who are at the top of page 1 of the narrative, and extra special thanks to two individuals, Rebecca Schob and Kendrick Bonderschmidt, who were the premier number crunchers that are behind a lot of the numbers that I see in the budget and that what you're going to see in the budget. And it doesn't happen automatically. There's a lot of stuff that has happened. So props out to Rebecca and Kendrick as well as the other members of the budget committee. Kentucky Housing Corporation enters fiscal 2022 in comparatively good financial condition, coming off what is projected to be a very profitable fiscal 2021. That said, the corporation continues to deal with what can be described as the most daunting challenge in its history, the coronavirus pandemic. As was discussed in last year's budget presentation and a little bit in my third quarter presentation, the primary financial challenge the corporation faces in this environment is one of liquidity, arising primarily from projected reductions in cash flows in the single-family loan servicing portfolio due to payment forbearance on federally backed or owned mortgages. Again, while largely a timing issue and despite having some cash reserves, these cash shortfalls, which are estimated to approach $10 million at June 30, could strain our liquidity resources. And we have in place lines of credit that will get us through severe shortages. I'm not particularly worried about it, but it is a financial risk that is out there with respect to coronavirus. With the decision to cease participation in the KRS pension plan, the 2022 budget reflects significantly reduced pension benefit expense, contributing to a sizable surplus for the year, which surplus will be used to help pay for the exit. And so, yes, we're going to generate a surplus through the operating budget, and we're going to take that significant reduction in cash outflows for pension and use it to help get out of the pension, pay our way out of the pension system. Revenue sources of the corporation's normal activities, the non-COVID related activities, are budgeted to be approximately the same as 2021. We are not going to grow appreciably. We have similar amounts of bond cap for conduit bond, multifamily deals. The servicing portfolio is not going to grow a whole lot. Production is budgeted a little bit higher this year than last year in single family, but all in all, there's not a huge projection in revenue coming from our normal activities, which is not the worst thing in the world because we're going to make $40 million with the normal activities for fiscal 21. So it should be, if everything stays course, a decent year next year, but not because revenues are it's not going to be significantly better than this year because revenues are anticipated to stay about the same. Due to the continuing success of the secondary market mortgage purchase program, the 2022 budget reflects originations to be financed through that program rather than revenue bond funding. And we have a financial model that models the relative present value efficacy of using the secondary market versus revenue bond financing. And secondary just runs circles around the present value of originating through the bond program. That is true whether we service or not, but it's extra true if we service cheaply and are able to make money on the residual annuity cash flows as well, which we are able to do. A couple of caveats here. Because of the large size of the Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund 2 stimulus program that is included in the 2022 budget, but which was not in the 2021 budget of projected actual figures for 2021, the comparative schedules discussed above and found on pages 8 and 9 use pro forma fiscal 2022 budget amounts. We compare the current year budget to the prior year budget to make sure that we're not off kilter someplace. And to do that, you have to take out you have to take the apples out of an orange and orange comparison. And so because the HHERF 2 activity is so big relative to our overall operations, we carved it out so that we are comparing what we would look like without it in 2022 to what we budgeted without it in 2021 to make sure that we didn't have any big variances. That's an important distinction to make because most of my talking points on the budget are using that one comparative schedule on page 8. The portion of the proposed budget in support of the Housing Finance Program, $10 million to be funded by the HRB, the Housing Revenue Bond indenture, reflects an increase from fiscal 2021, primarily recognizing the HRB's contribution supporting the withdrawal from KRS. Okay, and so where we budgeted and are experiencing $3.6 million drawdown out of the bond indenture for fiscal 21, that number is popping to $10 million for fiscal 2022. Now, the liability that we've carried on our books for the last 5 or 6 years for the pension liability, there has been a piece of it in the HRB. And so what's happening in fiscal 22 is they're actually paying toward defeasance of that liability. And so it will generate a significant budgeted surplus, which will then be spent to assist us getting out of the KRS pension plan. New pandemic-related initiatives, particularly programs created by the American Rescue Plan Act, have not been incorporated into this budget. As these are concrete, it is being zero to the overall budget performance, surplus or deficit. But there will be significant variances to select expenses and revenues. And so we don't know enough about how much the ERP is going to cost us or generate, but we are comfortable that any increases in the overall operating expenses we might incur will be recoverable dollar for dollar with admin fee revenues coming from the program. And so all in all, I think we have a fair presentation of the budget for what we know, and we've left out of it what we don't know, but we're prepared to handle the variances during fiscal 2022. As mentioned in the summary section of the narrative, the fiscal 2022 budget will require a total transfer of funds from the HRB of $10 million, an increase of 6.4. And as I said, that will generate a significant surplus. $1 million of that surplus is going to be used to transfer to the Housing Assistance Fund, as it has been in the past several years. And then an additional $11 million will be used to help pay down from withdrawing from KRS. Jeremy, if we could go to page 8 then. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the schedules, and I'm going through this as quickly but as thoroughly as I think we can handle. Looking at page 8, and you'll see here that the 2022 column, which is the leftmost column of figures, is the pro forma budget. And so it is the budget, but with HHERF2 carved out of it, so that we are now looking at what we would look like without that in the budget versus what we looked like with the same components in the 2021 budget. The first thing that sticks out is a huge drop in total salaries and benefits of looking at the 21 budget to the pro forma 2022 of $4.1 million. That is mostly due to the decrease in overall benefits expense on pension, dropping from 49.5% to 4%. So it's a monstrous drop, accounting for a little over $5 million of the negative. That negative is offset by small increases in some staffing levels in the 2022 budget due to some succession planning hires and increases in areas impacted by stimulus hires, as well as pay increases. And you might ask, well, if we've carved out stimulus from HHERF2, how can there be increase in salaries in what's left? There's a lot of stimulus activity that is still in the budget that could not be carved out as discreetly as the HHERF. Then the pro forma budget also has decreased by $610,000, representing certain overhead type expenses that are going to be allocable again to HHERF2. So when it's all said and done, we are not surprised by the number that is there, that it's a $4.1 million drop in overall comp and bennies. Looking down to line B, you can see that there's an anticipated increase in business services of $475,000. Most of that comes from contractors in the IT areas of our organization. I don't need to remind anybody here how expensive running these operations are. Providing an extra 80 to 100 remote workstations for temporary help, plus 200 remote workstations and capability networking for the 200 folks that would normally be on this campus and are also working remotely. It's not cheap, it's not easy, but sending the folks home was, of course, the prudent thing to do, and being able to handle it, albeit at an increased cost, it's better than the alternative. And so we do not want to be Colonial Pipeline. We have good cyber protection to our data networks. These expenses are in business services or contract labor as opposed to salaries on hired staff. These folks are extremely talented, extremely hard to find, and once found, extremely hard to keep. And so the contractor relationship we have found to be very successful and one that will continue into fiscal 2022. You can see an increase in the overall cost of computer operations. There's hardware, there's networking equipment, There's network line charges, what have you. Plus, we had significantly improved our backup systems during fiscal 2021. We're in the cloud with a lot of our processing and storage, and we have relocated our servers from Frankfurt to Louisville, so that if there is an issue in this building, we've demonstrated the ability to work remotely, and our equipment is in a more secure place than on the second floor of this building here. And so that comes at a cost as well. But again, it's, I look at it as insurance and also successful throughput of a lot of the necessary security procedures that we have to have in place to protect all of the information of all the people we serve. And so money, in my opinion, well spent and historically, and to be well spent in the fiscal 2022 budget. Line D, foreclosures, we are projecting actually a decrease in the overall cost of foreclosures. That's a net number after we collect all of our claims monies from HUD and VA and RHS. We have, when you cut through all of the delinquencies and all of the delinquent payments that I talked about in the third quarter analysis, we do believe that our borrowers are in good enough shape that they will weather through this and not end up in foreclosure. That there will be enough, not bailout. That's not a good term, but there will be enough assistance out there to get our folks, our borrowers in particular, ready to face the future and that future not be eviction from their house. So we don't really think that the foreclosure number is going to be. My point is that there's not 2 years worth of foreclosures that are going to flood through fiscal 22 because we couldn't foreclose in fiscal 21, so it's going to be shoved through into fiscal 22. The core borrowers that we have are extremely good borrowers on good loan products, and we just think that we'll be able to get through the year. We don't like $1 million of foreclosure expenses, but we think we'll be able to get through with the same amount that we budgeted last year. If you look at our actual numbers for 2021, there's quite a bit lower than that was budgeted at $1,156,000. Line E, I'm going to skip over to G for a minute. Legal fees, we are now budgeting significantly less there. And again, that's because last year we budgeted for UBP, this year we're not. So the budget for this year better, more accurately reflects the 2021 actual legal fees that we incurred. Equipment and software, we are budgeting a little bit less. Some of that, a large piece of last year's budget included finishing off a major software project that we did finish off in fiscal 21, under budget for fiscal 21, and that we will not be repeating that expenditure in fiscal 22. And then line G, the liquidation shortfall. Again, that is something that is anticipated by Ginnie Mae MBS servicers, of which we are one. And it's an expense of the program. It goes up when loans pay off. It's math is all it is on how loans pay off. We anticipate payoffs to continue at a fairly high clip into fiscal 22. So we did increase the budget for that, although the pro forma budget for 22 is going to be less than the 21 actual. So, but we under budget, we missed the budget last year. We did not anticipate the significant increase in payoffs that we've experienced in fiscal 21. Just some final comments. Obviously, I'm open to questions and comments. As the corporation moves into fiscal 2022 and looks ahead to 2023 and beyond, it is clear that trying to predict what the world will be like is potentially an exercise in futility. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I challenge anybody to actually predict it with any clarity. So it's therefore imperative that the corporation continue to hire and retain highly qualified staff able to react to whatever the corporation will face. Succession planning is a must. We ain't getting any younger. The ability to work remotely might become the new permanent paradigm. The corporation needs to be flexible enough to embrace what will be required to survive and continue to deliver its all-important mission, now perhaps more than ever. Having a more strategically progressive compensation benefit structure should enable the corporation to meet these future needs, and improvements to business continuity planning must continue. You just don't know what's going to hit you out there. I think we have a super budget here. I think we have super staff. I think we've shown tremendous resilience in the face of something that nobody could have predicted that we were going to have to face. I give everybody in the corporation, the board, committee members, just props on working with us and working through this and doing all the good things that needed to be done and continue to need to be done to relieve as much of the angst and the problems that COVID has foisted upon us. So my recommendation, Mr. Brunson, is that the board do approve the budget. And just to clarify very briefly, the first agenda item and resolution is to approve the budget that appears on page 5, which not only shows the revenues and expenses in very summary form, but also shows the sources and uses of funds in the HRB. Can you run back to page 5 real quick, Jeremy? Just so everybody's clear on what we're actually, that's it. You're approving the leftmost column of page 5, which you're looking at now, which the top piece is what's happening in the HRB. And this is estimated revenues and expenses and debt service, and then the contribution of $10,000 over to the operating budget. And then the operating fund budget down below, which does itemize a bunch of the revenue pieces for the overall, generating the overall surplus of 12.7. That's the first resolution that we were asking to be passed. Then the second resolution is on page 6, which is the detail of the total operating expenses that we just saw on page 5. And that's the operating expenses. These two schedules are required to be approved by the board as part of our housing revenue bond trust indenture and supplied to the trustee so that the trustee knows where we're spending our money and where we're getting our money from to spend it. And so those are why there's 2 resolutions associated with approving the operating budget. That concludes my remarks.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks for drilling down on that. That's helpful to all of us to be able to put eyeballs on what we're voting on. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make 2 motions. The first motion I'd like to make is the adoption and approval of Resolution 27, the annual budget for the Housing Revenue Bond resolution for July 1, 2021 through June 30th of 2022.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
Second.
Right. We have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Stephen?
Thank you. And the second motion that I'll make, Mr. Chairman, is for the approval of Resolution 28, which is the approval of the budgeted operating expenditures for the Housing Revenue Bond Resolution, again, July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to adopt Resolution 28. Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Just let me say to Stephen and Barry and Gail, it looks like our committee system is working very well, and I appreciate your all's efforts along with the staff. And I know we've commented many times how wonderful this staff is. But thank you to the committees for their hard and diligent work. So, do any of you all have any comments you want to make before we proceed? All right, so Jim, we'll come back to you on for the line of credit with PNC Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a routine annual procedure. We have a $65 million unsecured line of credit with PNC Bank NA. That bank line is used to warehouse current production of single-family loans prior to the formation of Ginnie Mae pools and the subsequent sale of those loans. It is also available for the defaulted loan buyout arbitrage program that we run here that is worth between $1 and $1.5 million of bottom line improvement by pulling certain loans out of pools and financing them with bank lines. then this line of credit is also available for liquidity shortfalls that may come up due to the forbearance of mortgage payments. And we were able to borrow if we were short of liquidity, which for the year we have not been, but if we were to be short of that liquidity, we put this capability of using this line for that purpose as well. The basic terms of this line are bear interest at 1 month LIBOR plus 50 basis points and has a non-usage fee of 15 basis points. Both of those terms are more favorable by a pretty good margin than the terms we had on the line last year. And remember, we were negotiating the line, or that's the line last year was put in place at the beginning of COVID and not after seeing a lot of what is going on with us as well as the banks. This is a LIBOR price line. SOFR is the other index that is coming online, probably not during fiscal 22. So a 30-day LIBOR should be the benchmark for the rest of the year or for the new fiscal year. But we're watching what's happening to the various indices that are coming up to replace LIBOR. Staff recommends approval to renew the line for $65 million with PNC NA on July 1 of 2021, maturity of June 30 of 2022.
So do any members have any questions of Jim? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this line of credit.
This is George. I'll make the motion that we approve this line of credit with PNC.
Thank you, George. Do I have a second?
Ms. Holly, I'll second that for you.
Okay, thank you, Holly. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, Jim, you want to talk about Fifth Third Bank?
Yes, sir. We also have a line of credit for $25 million at Fifth Third Bank that is also unsecured. It is not available for working capital or liquidity support that the PNC line has in it for the forbearance loans. And it is not as available for the delinquent loan arbitrage program as the PNC line of credit is. But it is a decent line. It's going to bear interest at LIBOR plus 85 bips at a non-usage fee of 25 basis points. So it is not quite as favorable terms as PNC. They've been a very good lender for us. I like to keep two lines, just to keep both lines honest a little, both banks honest a little bit, and recommend that we approve renewal of the $25 million line of credit with Fifth Third. That gives us total lines of credit of $90 million, which we did not need over the past year, but it's nice having it there. The non-usage fee, it's annoying, but it is market now pretty much that it's better to have it available than have to scramble to get it at a time when you can't get it, because I can assure you that the rate you'd get it at if you had to scramble wouldn't be the fairly favorable rates that we're getting on these lines by putting them in place for the full year.
Any members have any further questions of Jim in regard to this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt this.
So, Dale.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
This is Jerry. I'll second.
Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And I would like the record to reflect that I abstained on this motion due to the fact that I am responsible for a significant business relationship with Fifth Third Bank. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chair Denham. I'll note that in the minutes.
Thank you. All right, Jim, you're up again. Authorization.
And listen, everybody, I don't like to listen to me for this long, so I appreciate you bearing with me, and I'm trying to get through this agenda this afternoon. This agenda item deals with the requested authorization to enter into contracts with Kentuckiana Property Preservation LLC, Paid to by Realty LLC, and Rednar and Associates Inc. to provide property preservation services for KHC single-family default portfolio. We are required by our investors and our insurers to inspect properties on a regular basis if they are not current. And we hire people to go over throughout the state to visit each of these properties. They don't have to knock on the door, but they're to advise us whether it looks abandoned or not. And if they determine that it is abandoned, then we have to secure the pits also take care of for us. They also do in the summertime lawn mowing. They also in wintertime do winterization. And so they're the statewide 3 handymen that we use to keep our properties in reasonable good shape during default if they're abandoned, number one, and they also verify that they are not abandoned if they're occupied, which is still costs us something, but it doesn't cost as much as it does to preserve the property. Following a request for proposal process in 2021, KHC selected the 3 companies that I just elaborated on, and we are asking that contracts for $800,000, excuse me, to Kentuckiana Property Preservation be approved, a $250,000 contract with Paid to Buy Realty, and an $800,000 contract with Rednar Associates. I think these are the same amounts that were in the contracts for last year. And almost all of this is recoverable from FHA, VA, HUD, Fannie Mae, and RHS. And so we spend it, then we recover it as part of the claims process, or from the borrower if the loan reinstates. And so management recommends approval of this agenda item and this resolution to enter into contracts with these 3 entities.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Holly, I'll second.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Jim, you know what I'm going to ask. Are any of them female or minority owned?
And this one's, I'm not 100% sure. I did on the RFP verify that we went through the channels that we normally go through to make sure that P was sufficiently broadcast, if you will, or made available. But to be honest with you, Kathy, I don't know whether they are women minority owned or not. They are the only 3 respondents to the RFP. So, and get the word out.
Okay.
I know that's not an answer, but I'll dig into it a little bit more and provide an update to you. I'll just provide an update to you.
Any other members have any questions? If not, I entertain a motion. We adopt this resolution.
Steve will make a motion.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second, Mr. Chair, and then there were questions asked after the motion and second. So you know.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Jim, thank you for your effort and your hard work, and we appreciate all that you do for the organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.
You have a tremendous responsibility, and so we always like to hear from you.
Maybe not for so long, huh?
Okay. So, all right. So, Jeremy, we need to talk about the personal service contract with Ballast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this body is aware, with KHC exiting the KERS pension system, we are required to establish an alternative pension plan, which we are winding up that process of finalizing all of that. As part of that, we have to have trustees of the new pension plan, and the trustees, at least in the beginning, will be the executive team of Kentucky Housing Corporation. Outside of Jim Statler, who doesn't have the required licensures, none of us are qualified to review investments and verify how good those are and whether they are good options to offer to our employees within their pension plan. So this contract would be with a company called Ballast Inc., which is a financial advising company out of Lexington. We issued an RFP a couple of weeks ago. We had 2 respondents, and Ballast was unanimously selected by the review committee for that contract. The contract would be for an amount not to exceed $16,000. And the pricing on this is at 30 basis points or a minimum of $4,000 per quarter. So with it being a new plan, we don't really expect 30 basis points to cost $16,000 a year, but if it does exceed that, we'll be coming back to you to amend the contract, but we don't expect that. So staff does recommend approval of this contract for fiscal year 2022. This would be the first year of the contract, and it would be renewable at Kentucky Housing's option for another 2 years.
Any members have any questions? Okay,
this is George. I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Joe Sanders, adoption of the information security policy, resolution number 36.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Joe Sanders. I'm the Managing Director of Technology Services and the Cybersecurity Department. And I'm here for your consideration of resolution number 36 for the adoption of our information security policy. I believe all of you should have it in your package. So not going to read through the whole policy, but if there were some questions on certain areas, I am open to answer those questions and address any concerns you may have.
Any members have any questions of Joe in regard to this policy? Joe, the only thing I would ask, have you had any problems, any hacks or invasions the last 12 months?
No, we've blocked a lot of, as you know, phishing attempts, but we have not had any intrusions or anything that have compromised any of our data or anything. So we track everything. We have a lot of tools in place where we monitor and we track all the activity 24/7.
Any other members have any questions of Joe? If not, entertain a motion that we adopt resolution 36.
Holly, I'll move.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. And Joe, this is a critical task and we appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we move on to informational items, and I'm going to call Winston first. Winston, do you have anything that you would like to bring before the board?
I have two items, Mr. Chairman, that are not on the agenda that either fit under item 12 or item 13 on the agenda. And so I'll address those at this time. But the first one, it relates to the standing up of the new retirement plan and the participation in that. And there were questions about participation levels and that sort of thing that were raised, very good questions at the last meeting or the meeting before. I'm going to ask Amy Smith to address those. She's been principally involved in ensuring that we have maximum participation. Amy?
Thanks, Winston. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the March board meeting, you all may remember that the board approved a new retirement plan for KHC. This option was available for all of our full-time staff as well as our part-time staff, regular employees, so not contractual staff and not temps. And it included a 4% matching contribution by KHC. So if employees contributed 4% or up to 4%, KHC would match up to 4%. At that time, there was a concern expressed by the board that staff might not elect to participate in the new plan because we've seen that, you know, sometimes younger staff or staff who are unsure about their paycheck might not want to participate, and these are they tend to be our lower paid staff. So the executive team committed at that board meeting to make every attempt that we could reach 100% enrollment if at all possible. The enrollment for the new plan ends tomorrow, so we have to have all the forms to our vendor by tomorrow afternoon, May 28th. And we currently have only one full-time regular employee who is elected not to enroll in the new retirement plan. I think that's a huge win for the corporation, and we've reached out to her multiple times in the last week, and it really is just a personal decision. We also have 6 part-time employees who have not enrolled. They are, 5 of them are retirees and have opted not to add an additional retirement plan. They consider themselves part-time, short-time, part-time temps. And then we had one who was a temporary but hired on as a full-time, as a part-time employee, but for a temporary term of time. So really one full-time regular employee opted not to enroll in the plan. So of the 210 staff, 209 are enrolling. Those extra 6 are part-time staff that did not enroll. We consider that enrollment rate, which is less than 1%, a huge success for KHC. And I'll just publicly thank the staff in Human Resources and Accounting that helped me make sure everybody got their paperwork in and make sure that they got the information they needed about the plan. We actually did call back all of the staff who were on the fence or did not think they wanted to enroll and just make sure we answered all their questions. And we feel really, really good about the numbers that have enrolled. I can tell you as well that all but 2 staff opted to contribute the 4%, which I think is a huge win. So all of those staff that have enrolled are contributing their 4%, so they'll get the full match. The 2 that did not contribute their 4% said they really wanted to see their paycheck after they contributed. 1 contributed 2 and 1 contributed 3, and they wanted to just see their paycheck before they bumped it up to 4, but they were willing to bump it up to 4 sometime in the near future. And then I don't have the final numbers, but our rep at Deferred Comp said he had quite a few staff, over 15, that made contributions above the 4%, so around 5 or 6%. So we feel really, really good about the enrollment for the new retirement plan and how many have participated and their level of contribution. I think it's just going to set our staff up for huge wins in the future with their retirement going into this new plan.
Amy, that's tremendous success. And thank you for your efforts, and thanks to management and the staff for working so well together. That's unbelievable. I would never have thought that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Amy and her team has done a great job on this, and we're really appreciative of her efforts, and we're pleased because it's going to bring such great results to the employees themselves, and that's who we really want to benefit in this is the individual employees. Mr. Chairman, the second item that I had on the agenda, if I have the leave of the chair, I will address. To start that off, I'd like to say thank you, a special thank you to Kathy Henko and to Gail Lively. And the reason for those special thank yous to Kathy and Gail relate to the discussion that we had at the last board meeting relating to the disparity in home ownership of the point between Black homeowners and white homeowners in the city of Louisville. And the gap that exists between those. Kathy pointed out a recent Willow study that showed that 37% of the Black population were homeowners, while 74.9% of the white population was homeowners, which resulted in a 37.9% gap, a very substantial and not acceptable gap. Gail followed up with a question, which we couldn't answer at the time of the meeting, about what similar home ownership rates for the rest of the state of Kentucky would indicate. So following that meeting, we located a similar recent Zillow study, which indicates that for Kentucky as a whole, the rates of Black home ownership are 38.2%, white ownership 71.2%, with a gap of 33%. Thank you again to Kathy and Gail for bringing this to our attention and and causing us to focus upon it at this point in time. While the Louisville gap is 5% points worse than the Kentucky average rate, frankly, both of these rates are absolutely terrible and unacceptable. The rate of home ownership for all minorities in Louisville and Kentucky is a matter which must be improved and deserves the attention of the Kentucky Housing Corporation and other organizations that are involved in providing fair and affordable housing to Kentucky. These Zillow numbers may be new, but these gaps and the disparities which they represent are clearly not anything new at all. Having Kathy and Gail raise these questions, and I'm sure similar questions were going on in the minds of the other board members, it led us here to take stock at sort of what we're currently doing, that is what KHC is currently doing to address home ownership disparities in Kentucky. I'd like to mention several of those, and I'm going to preface it by saying we're not saying what we've been doing or have done is enough, and we're not saying that what we've done absolves us of any responsibility for it not being better. But I do think it's important to put in context some of the things that Kentucky Housing has done and some of the accomplishments which I think we deserve some credit for. And they are 5 points that I'm going to mention real quickly. Kentucky Housing Corporation is one of the top lenders providing down payment assistance in Kentucky. This helped home buyers of color access conventional, non-predatory home loans. So that's a plus. Second, the Kentucky Housing Corporation is also a top lender in funding small dollar mortgages of $100,000 or less. Smaller mortgages are often less appealing to conventional banks, but often serve home buyers of color, and therefore is a plus. Third, nearly one in 10 of the home buyers getting a Kentucky Housing Corporation loan are African American, 1 in 10. And further, 13% of the borrowers that obtain mortgages from Kentucky Housing Corporation did not share or have not shared their race with Kentucky Housing Corporation. So we really don't know what the ultimate numbers are, but we could be doing better than 9%, which is not good enough, but it is a number that we should note. Fourth, this past year, the Kentucky Housing Corporation made long-term racial equity commitments in the form of grants to 2 organizations. We made a grant to the Louisville Urban League of $135,000 per year for the next 3 years. And to the Lexington Urban League, we made a grant of $25,000 for each of the next 3 years. Both of these grants are designed to support the preservation of existing home ownership, the cultivation of new home ownership, and housing stability for renters in neighborhoods at the risk of gentrification. Finally, going back to even 2014, should be noted that Kentucky Housing Corporation created a multicultural customer service and outreach coordinator, that position in our single family mortgage program, with a focus on marketing Kentucky Housing Corporation home loans to minority communities throughout the state. That position still exists and is still active. And this staff member spends a great deal of their time building relationships with organizations that work with diverse Kentuckians across the state. And he speaks several languages and is active in the Kentucky Refugee Ministries, works across Kentucky Housing Corporation programs to remove the language barrier that exists out there in many, many respects. Again, to repeat what I said earlier, by referencing these actions, we're not suggesting that we've done all that needs to be done or all that can be done, but we want to confirm that Kentucky Housing Corporation is mindful of the challenges of addressing home ownership, these home ownership disparities. We will continue to attempt to identify ways to improve minority home ownership in Kentucky. Again, we want to thank Kathy and Gail for focusing our attention on this serious issue. So having made those comments, Mr. Chairman, the only thing else I have to say about this meeting is I appreciate the fact that everybody has endured this meeting for almost 2 hours. It's been very long and it's been very intense, and there's been an enormous amount of information conveyed. I'm most appreciative to the staff that has prepared the information and presented it to you all. It's taken a lot of long, hard hours of work to pull all this together and make it in a form that it would be hopefully digestible and informative. And so my hat goes off to them and thank them for all the work. And my hat also goes off to you, Mr. Chairman, and all the board members who have sat here patiently and who have reviewed the information in advance of the meeting and consumed the information during the meeting and supported us in our efforts to do what needs to be done for Kentuckians. So that's the end of my comments today.
Thank you, Winston. We appreciate your effort and your hard work. Any other members of the board or staff have anything that they want to bring to the board's attention?
This is Steve, Mr. Chairman. Just curious as if there's been any discussion percolating up regarding returning to in-person meetings.
I think so. Winston, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to address that, and Secretary Johnson may choose to address that as well. But coincidentally, on the day that the CDC made its announcement of the change in policy with regard to masks and other issues a couple of weeks ago, that very afternoon, a memorandum was issued by boards and commission under Secretary Johnson's signature, setting forth the criteria for future meetings, as we go forth here. It's my judgment that the criteria that was set forth in that memorandum have likely been superseded, in part at least, with reference as a result of what the CDC has had to say. But I don't think there's been a formal new memo by boards and commissions setting forth any different standards, but I would anticipate that there will be. Am I correct thus far, Secretary Johnson?
Yeah, the memo was drafted and signed and issued technically before the CDC came forward with their change in policy regarding masks and meetings. Of course, you can still have the board in person and the staff in person. The memorandum that we have in place right now does indicate that they would like those individuals to be vaccinated. However, the memo is very vague in terms of if you show up, we would normally just assume that you are vaccinated and you have done that on the honor system. We are not asking anyone to be invasive into your personal medical history, so to speak. However, as Winston did indicate, it's hard for me not to call him deputy. I'm so used to calling him deputy. As Winston did indicate, things have changed. So I do think that we are going to see, particularly for those meetings that occur after the June 11th date, that we may see a lot less restrictions coming up, but we don't have anything prepared to go out yet. However, the board itself can come and meet, can be reimbursed for appearing, for their travel to appear in Frankfurt or wherever the meeting might want to be taking place. So.
Our next scheduled board meeting is in August. I think it's the end of August, and between now and certainly the beginning of August, we will be evaluating our options concerning whether or not to hold that meeting in person, with, of course, an option for those that choose not to attend in person to attend virtually. So we'll be back to you on that. I would hope that we could be back to an in-person meeting in August. I'd certainly look forward to that. I will mention one other thing that I didn't have on my list, and we'll send out notice to you all about this if you have any interest in this. We are I'm going to have to stand corrected, Amy, on the date. Is it July the 1st that we're having on July the 1st, we're having an outdoor event for our staff here and on the grounds of Kentucky Housing Corporation. It's going to be, going to have food trucks and with, I think, barbecue and gelato and just an opportunity for people to visit and with each other in social distancing and in compliance with what they conceive to be the CDC requirements. We will send invitations to all of you all. We would love to see you there. We'd love for you to come and greet our staff. You know, we understand if your busy schedules and otherwise make that not practical, but I did want to let you know that this is we didn't do an event last year of any kind. We've historically done something like this each year, and we decided that we're ready to do something as long as we can do it safely. So we think we can do it safely, and we're planning to proceed with that. We'd love to have you all attend. Let us know. We'll send you invitations. Let us know if you're coming so that we make sure we can recognize you all. It's been so long since we've seen you. It may be we'll have to look back at our photographs to make sure we know what everybody looks like. So
that's on Thursday, July 1, right?
It is. And I forget the exact start time, but I think it's around 11. And we have staggered people over about, we give them sort of an assigned time to come with about an hour's window to be here so that we're not having everybody here at one time. And it should work well.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Winston, do you have anything further?
No, don't give me an opportunity or I'll keep talking. It's time for everybody to go home.
What about other members of the staff? Anybody or the board? Anybody have anything you want to bring up? Okay, well, with that, I just want to wish everybody a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend, and please remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Evil second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Yes.
Thanks again.